A container ship is tied up in port. The main engine is stopped. No combustion. The crankshaft isn't turning. By every normal definition, that engine is off. Go down into the engine room anyway. It's loud. Pumps are running. Oil is moving through the engine. The fuel is being held hot. Something is circulating through a machine that isn't doing anything at all. The internet loves one claim about these ships. The engine runs for months and is never shut down. It might be the most repeated fact about cargo ships out there. It's also wrong. The engine gets stopped all the time. What it doesn't get is switched off. Like every good myth, this one starts with the truth. A container ship crossing from Shanghai to Rotterdam can be at sea for a month or more, depending on the route. And for most of that crossing, the main engine just keeps running. Days, weeks. Nobody shuts it down in the middle of an ocean. Why would they? So the story writes itself. If it can run for a month straight, surely it never stops at all. And the engine absolutely looks the part. On a large container ship, it stands 3 or 4 stories tall. You don't stand next to this thing, you climb past it, on catwalks, level after level. It can burn a fuel that shows up looking more like tar than diesel. Nothing about it feels like a machine anyone just switches on and off. So far, every word of that is true. But sooner or later, the ocean runs out. A crossing is not the whole life of a ship. Between crossings there are ports, loading, unloading, waiting at anchor for a berth, and in port, that engine gets stopped. Start with the propeller, because it explains everything else. The ships we're talking about are the big ones. Large, slow-speed, reversible 2-stroke diesels driving a fixed-pitch propeller. Container ships, bulk carriers, tankers. On that layout, there is no gearbox and no clutch. The engine is bolted to a shaft, and the shaft ends in the propeller. One solid line from the cylinders to the water, which means that as long as the engine turns, the propeller turns. Smaller vessels, ferries, and plenty of ships with controllable pitch propellers or diesel-electric drive don't work this way at all. But the giants that carry most of what you own do. Now put that ship against a quay, with cranes over it and mooring lines holding it. A turning propeller is the last thing anyone wants. So the engine is stopped, and it stays stopped, sometimes for a day, sometimes longer. The ship doesn't go dark. Its electricity comes from auxiliary generators, smaller diesel engines that have nothing to do with propulsion, or from a cable plugged into the port itself. Shore power, running the ship from the grid on land. And yes, there is a third generator on board. The emergency one. That one isn't part of daily life. It sits waiting for a blackout, wired to the circuits that keep people alive. Steering, radio, emergency lighting. If the emergency generator is running, something has gone wrong. So the engine is stopped. This is where it gets strange. Combustion has ended. The crankshaft is still. But the machinery around that engine has not stopped, and in most cases, it is not allowed to. Think about the size for a moment. This is a block of metal several stories tall, with a crankshaft that alone can weigh tens of tons. Metal that big doesn't cool evenly. Different parts lose heat at different rates, and the stresses that come with it are exactly what engineers spend their careers avoiding. There is also the question of what happens next. A ship in port is a ship that will be leaving, sometimes on schedule, sometimes early, sometimes at an hour nobody planned for. Berths get freed up, tides open and close. A pilot becomes available at 4 in the morning, and the window is 2 hours wide. A stone-cold engine can't answer that, not because it refuses to start, but because it can't be trusted with power straight away. Bring it up from cold, and the load has to come on slowly, which turns a departure into a negotiation with your own machinery. Engine makers put numbers on this. MAN recommends bringing the jacket cooling water up to at least 50 degrees before a normal start. That figure isn't a locked door. An exceptional start from as low as 20 degrees is allowed, with the load brought up slowly afterwards. But it tells you what the builders expect: an engine held warm, not an engine woken up from cold. So the crew keeps it warm. And keeping several stories of iron warm is not a passive thing. It takes machines, and those machines run while the engine does nothing. Here is what's actually happening inside a stopped engine. Start with the fuel, because it's the strangest part. Many large conventional cargo ships can run on residual heavy fuel oil, depending on the engine, the route, and the fuel rules in force. At ordinary temperatures, some of those residual fuels turn extremely viscous, closer to roofing tar than to diesel. They may still move, but nothing like the thin liquid an injector needs. So the ship heats that fuel in the tanks, heats it in the pipes, and heats it again right before the injectors. Warm enough to pump is not the same as thin enough to burn, and the system has to deliver both. Now stop the engine and let all of that go cold. So it doesn't go cold. According to man's own project guide, an electric pump keeps circulating preheated heavy fuel oil through the engine while the engine is stopped. Hot fuel, moving through cylinders that aren't firing. Lubricating oil is handled the same way, with a caveat. While the engine is being kept ready, pre-lubrication pumps circulate oil before a restart, and depending on the installation and the standby condition, may keep it circulating through the stop. The bearings and running surfaces don't get left dry. Cooling water too, except that here the word cooling stops making sense. There's no combustion left to cool. The water is being warmed and pushed around the engine, holding the metal at temperature, ready. All of that heat has to come from somewhere, and it isn't the main engine. It comes from an auxiliary boiler, or from the exhaust of the generators doing the ship's ordinary work. The small machines keeping the big one ready. There is a point where the ship gives up on all this. If the stop is long enough, a docking, a repair, an extended layup, the engine is switched over to distillate fuel and allowed to go properly cold. In the Mayan installation described in its project guide, a stop expected to run beyond roughly 5 days is one of the reasons to make that changeover. Short stop, keep it hot. Long one, shut it down for real. That engine has no starter motor. Nothing like the one in a car. There is no electric device anywhere on board capable of turning a crankshaft that heavy. It starts on air. Compressed air stored at high pressure in steel receivers is fed straight into the cylinders. The air pushes the pistons down, the crankshaft begins to turn, and once it's moving fast enough, fuel is injected and combustion takes over. The engine breathes its way to life before it burns anything. And the air in those receivers runs out. Every start spends some of it. So, the classification rules set a floor. For a reversible engine, the stored air has to be enough for at least 12 consecutive starts, alternating between a head and a stern, without being replenished. For a non-reversible one, at least 6. At least 12 starts, held in a starting air system with a minimum of 2 receivers. The rules go further, because they know exactly what's at stake. Not 1 receiver, but at least 2. Not 1 compressor, but at least 2. And the compressors have to be able to refill the whole system, from atmospheric pressure, within 1 hour. That's not the language of comfort. That's the language of a system somebody has already thought hard about losing. 3 things get mangled almost every time this story comes up, so let's be straight about all of them. This engine absolutely can be switched off, fully cooled, drained, opened up, taken apart. It happens at every dry docking and every major repair. Anyone telling you a ship's engine can never be shut down is selling drama. The real claim is narrower and better. While the ship has to stay ready to sail, a stopped engine is not left to go cold. 12 starts isn't a countdown to disaster either. It's a guaranteed minimum with the compressors switched off. In normal service, those compressors are running, and the air comes back. A ship becomes genuinely vulnerable only when starts keep failing and the pressure can't be restored at the same time. Which is exactly why the rules demand 2 of everything. And the one you almost never hear. In port, the ship is not surviving on its emergency generator. It runs on its ordinary auxiliary generators, or on shore power. The emergency set is a last resort with a different job. Strip all of that away, and one sentence survives. Stopping the engine ends the combustion and stops the shaft. it does not stop the machinery keeping that engine ready. One question is still open, and it's the best one. No gearbox, no clutch. So, how does a ship go astern? It doesn't put anything into reverse. The engine itself runs backwards. On a reversible two-stroke, the timing is shifted, air is fed into the cylinders in a different order, and the whole crankshaft is brought to a stop and started again turning the other way. Several stories of engine, reversed. Now, go back to the air receivers, and the numbers stop being trivia. A harbor maneuver on this kind of ship can call for a sequence of stops, starts, and reversals. Coming alongside a berth can take a series of them, one after another, at the worst possible moment to run out of anything. 12 starts sounded like plenty a few minutes ago. Standing on a bridge with a quay coming closer, it sounds like a budget. So, come back to that ship at the quay. Cranes overhead, lines out, nothing moving in the engine room that a passerby would notice. The main engine is stopped, and around it, quietly, the ship keeps a promise. Hot fuel circulating through cylinders that aren't firing. Oil moving over bearings carrying nothing. Water holding several stories of iron at temperature. 12 breaths of compressed air waiting in steel receivers. Notice what that costs. A fully shut down engine is the cheap one. Cold, drained, opened up, asking nothing from anybody, going nowhere. A running engine at least earns its keep, pushing 100,000 tons of cargo across an ocean. The expensive state is the one in between. It is not running, and it is not shut down. It is stopped, while an entire ship keeps it ready to move. The most repeated fact about cargo ships says the engine never stops. It stops all the time. It was just never off.